I'm Teisha Bader with Shalom TV's news update for Wednesday, October the 30th, 2013. White House officials met with American Jewish leaders to discuss the current situation with Iran. White House National Security Advisor Susan Rice, her deputies Ben Rhodes and Tony Blinken, together with Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman, met with the leaders of 4 major American Jewish organizations at the White House yesterday afternoon. The participants included leaders of the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations, the Anti-Defamation League, the American Jewish Committee, and AIPAC. The Conference of Presidents released a statement following the meeting, saying we had a constructive and open exchange and agreed to continue the consultation to enhance the prospect of achieving a transparent and effective diplomatic resolution. Adding, we welcome the reaffirmation of the President's commitment to prevent Iran from attaining nuclear capability and that all options remain viable to assure that end. The Jerusalem Post reported that the meeting was an effort by Washington to dissuade the American Jewish groups from lobbying the Senate to impose stronger sanctions against Iran, something the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said is imperative in order to keep the pressure on Iran and prevent it from attaining nuclear weapons. Whereas the White House has leaned more towards holding off on legislation regarding additional sanctions against Iran, giving time for diplomacy with Iran to get underway. A Palestinian Authority official said yesterday that Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas's position regarding a peace deal with Israel has not changed. PLO Secretary General Yasser Abed Rabbo denied a report yesterday by Israel Radio that had said that Abbas was softening his stance on the possibility of an interim deal with Israel that would delay the tough decisions on the issues of Jerusalem and the Palestinian right of return, as we reported to you about yesterday. But Abed Rabbo said later that the Palestinian government rejects any interim solutions with Israel and rejects the idea of establishing a Palestinian state with temporary borders. He said that there would be no solution or peace without the establishment of an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital on the pre-1967 lines. As expected, Israel's release of 26 Palestinian prisoners took place in the early morning hours this morning in Israel, the second part of a 4-stage deal with the Palestinian Authority that was decided upon at the restart of peace talks back in July. The prisoners who were convicted of murder or attempted murder before the 1993 Oslo Accords were released from Ofer prison, 21 to Ramallah in the West Bank and 5 to the Gaza Strip. About 2,000 Palestinians greeted the prisoners at Mukata, the PLO presidential compound, carrying signs and waving flags in celebration. Israel's High Court of Justice had ruled against an appeal yesterday by the Almagor Terror Victims Association that had asked the government to halt the release. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had said yesterday that the decision to release the prisoners was an extremely difficult and painful one, but a necessary one given the present reality. Israel is expected to release the third group of prisoners in December or January and the last group in March or April. And several hours after the prisoner release this morning, Prime Minister Netanyahu announced the Israeli government's plans to approve 1,500 new housing units in Ramat Shlomo, a neighborhood in Jerusalem that is over the Green Line. The government also approved the establishment of a visitor's center near the City of David National Park in Silwan, as well as a national park on the hills of Mount Scopus in Jerusalem. A report from a Kuwaiti newspaper is claiming that a deal was coming together that would provide Israel with new information on long-time missing Israel Air Force navigator Ron Arad. Arad was taken captive by the Lebanese Shiite group Amal 27 years ago while flying an IAF mission over Lebanon and had to eject from his plane. Kuwaiti newspaper Al Siyasa reported today that a deal was being formed that would give Israel information on Arad in exchange for Iran receiving information on 4 Iranian diplomats who went missing near Beirut in 1982. Al-Siyasa claimed the deal became possible due to new information on Arad received by Western intelligence officials, reportedly passed along to them by Hussein Moussaoui, the brother of one of the 4 missing Iranian diplomats. Moussaoui is believed to be one of the few people who know the fate of Arad, who has not been heard from since 1987 when the Red Cross was last given access to him. This current Kuwaiti report is not the first time reports have surfaced regarding Arad. Unfortunately, no report has yielded any information on the missing navigator as of yet. The Associated Press reports that the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the Palestinian territories says that if renewed peace talks with Israel fail, the General Assembly should seek an opinion from the International Court of Justice on the legal consequences of Israel's, quote, occupation of land claimed by the Palestinians. Special Rapporteur Richard Falk, himself Jewish, who is an outspoken Israel critic, made the recommendation to the General Assembly's Human Rights Committee yesterday, where he also called Israel's occupation an affront to international law. Falk has been criticized repeatedly by Israel for his controversial reports and remarks, and the U.S. questioned Falk's capability to serve in his current position at the UN earlier this year after he made some provocative remarks about terrorism. Falk has continued to say that he is simply doing his job. Jewish groups here in the United States expressed their condolences over the passing of Poland's first post-communist prime minister, Tadeusz Mazowiecki, who died on Monday at the age of 86. World Jewish Congress leader Ronald Lauder praised the leader, who was one of the founders of the Solidarity movement, and cited his role in opening Polish airports to Soviet Jews and his efforts to repeal the 1975 United Nations resolution that equated Zionism and racism. Lauder said he will also be remembered for speaking out against anti-Semitism clearly and unequivocally. Executive Director of the American Jewish Committee David Harris said Mazowiecki will long be revered as a passionate, principled, and fearless activist and visionary, saying the Polish leader was key to transforming Poland's relations with world Jewry, restoring diplomatic relations with Israel in 1990 that had been severed by Warsaw in 1967, and providing a critically needed transit route for Jews leaving the Soviet Union and going to Israel. The president of the Union of Jewish Religious Communities in Poland, Piotr Kadlik, wrote that Mazowiecki was a friend of the Jewish community and that Poland's Jews would remember him as a symbol of dialogue and extraordinary wisdom and goodness in difficult and rebellious times. And the Crown Prince of Denmark, Frederick, will make his first visit to Israel today in commemoration of 70 years since the rescue of Danish Jews from the Holocaust. According to the official homepage of the Danish monarchy, the Crown Prince's visit was timed to coincide with the rescue of Danish Jews in October of 1943, in which more than 7,000 Jews were sent to safety in Sweden. Frederick will visit Israel's living memorial to the Holocaust, Yad Vashem, and will also meet with Israeli President Shimon Peres. And finally, tonight on Shalom TV, Mark Golub discusses the recent Pew report on American Jews with Deputy Director of the Pew Research Center's Religion and Public Life Project, Alan Cooperman. That's at 8 p.m. And that's followed by a L'chaim roundtable on the Pew report at 9, with a panel of experts, including leading demographer Dr. Stephen M. Cohen and Dr. Bethany Horowitz, who has conducted major research studies on Jewish life for more than 2 decades, including the 1990 National Jewish Population Study that drew a portrait of New York Jewry for the UJA Federation of New York. That's tonight here on Shalom TV and ShalomTV.com. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Wednesday, October the 30th, 2013. I'm Teisha Bader.